Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith, episode 118. Topic, rainy day. What do you do on a rainy day? Well, one, you could take questions. One question that came up earlier was, should you play up? Should you play your age group or play up? I love Jimmy Connor's thought on that, play where the pressure is. So we have these international tournaments coming up. If you haven't won at the 16s, you don't, my opinion, you don't play the 18s. There is the formula where if 25% of the time you would play up, 25% of the time you play down, 50% of the time you're playing in the middle. But with tournaments, years ago in the US, there was no level 2s, 3s, and 4s. There was just level 1s. There was the indoor nationals at Thanksgiving, but other than that, there were just hard courts and clay. And we developed better players when we had less national tournaments. Now it's almost like get out your checkbook. So all of tennis would have to cooperate, where anybody plays everybody. There's just not enough matches being played. Probably the toughest thing in junior tennis in America right now is to find practice matches. Jimmy Connors, arguably from the best age group of any American group. I've said this before on the podcast. Jimmy Connors. Gare Leister's a little bit younger. Eddie Dibbs a little bit older. We have Harold Solomon, Roscoe Tanner, Dick Stockton. And there's a second tier of players, but the ones I've mentioned, top 10 in the world. If you interview top junior players that become pros, they can just go back, yeah, we played in the 12s, played the 14s. They played each other so many times, they don't remember playing. On a high school team, for example, it's very common. You have, say, two really good players. Well, let me say this first. On a high school team, very often, the best players aren't playing. They're homeschooling. Even if they don't homeschool, they become bigger than the program. But say, for example, hypothetically, you have two really good girls. They're on a high school team, and they play all 4 years. And you really could count on 10 fingers how many times they played a practice match. I asked a couple of good tennis players last week, they practice together all the time. Or I should say they're with each other all the time, where they go to train. And I've been coaching these players for 5 years. Have you guys ever played best of 5? Just get up early, go play best of 5 singles. Have you ever played best of 5 ghost doubles? But the topic is really rainy day with questions. So we're having a lot of rain, and I was asked, what are we going to do? Number one sport in America is go to the mall. Okay, you hear this all the time, as well, we can catch up on homework. A real organized, and it's a key word, organization, a really organized student athlete doesn't have to catch up on their homework because they don't get behind. They're disciplined. Catch up on your sleep. If you study sleep, you don't catch up on your sleep. We all know we can take a chill pill or we can relax. For some people on a rainy day, well, just get your work done and let's watch a couple movies. Go read a book. With visitors, in fact, I have a couple of phone calls to make this week for some players that left. They were here for a couple months. And I told the moms, it was just because the moms were with them, I could have told the moms and the dads or just the dads. I said, let's have a conversation. Your daughter, you, I'll be on the phone. And they don't really know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to try to be negative, doom and gloom, but I'll ask them seriously, boom, boom, boom. Typewriter, machine gun questions, one right after the other. And the answer is going to be no, no, no. Like what do players do with their time? One thing, our podcast. So there's some people that we've coached long enough, for sure, current juniors, goal-oriented, college-bound juniors, that they didn't start listening to our podcast as soon as we've made them. So again, we're on 118. And some podcasts are an hour and some are 3 hours. But you take the average, it'd be 0.014, a little over 1% of the week to listen to the podcast. Time management. If someone was organized, PIP, get your poop in a pile. Typically, the success of a young junior tennis player has so much to do with the attitude of the household. Are they organized? What do they do when they get up in the morning? When we have people get up in the morning, I like to listen to commencement speeches, and it became popular. So many people heard the commander from the Navy, U.S. Navy, should know his name. There's a book now, Make Your Bed. And one of our supporters says, no, you don't have to make your bed because you have to air your bed out. Someone my age, I grew up in a small town, and my father was in World War II, and I think every kid I knew, his father was in World War II. I remember going to hockey school in Toronto, and we'd have to drop a quarter on the sheet. If it bounced, you were in good shape. If not, everybody in your barrack, what they did is they took the hurling rinks at this huge facility in Scarborough, Ontario, and they converted them into barracks with all these bunk beds. And if your quarter didn't bounce on that sheet, you were doing push-ups and sit-ups. Everybody in your group was going to be doing exercises. And that's just the way it was. It was just so organized. With someone says, what do you do on a rainy day? Is you go run. We tell people you should read the book Amazing Racers, Bill Harris. He tells in his book, he says everybody should run at 70%. Tennis players should never jog. We're always having players pick balls up by jogging backwards. 3 balls in your left hand, 3 balls in your right. And because when you're jogging, you're using decelerators, boom, 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 and you're not really developing yourself the right way as a tennis player. But to have a running program, to have a stopwatch, to have personal bests. Kids visit us, and that'd be one of the questions I could ask, when I quiz parents and the player. Okay, you've been home for 2-3 weeks now, boom, let's go through. Do you do any of the routines? And it just zaps people with their confidence. You tell people to do something, and if they do it, they'll become confident. Confident, the absence of uncertainty. Rainer Martin's great definition. You're certain you're doing the routines. You're certain you're going to have a 20, a 40, a mile, a 3 mile, and everything in between marked off. And you're going to have a place where you can write that down. Your hero or zero. But a rainy day with Joey Johnson was on one of our podcasts way back when, with son Spencer. Spencer's finish up on a mission. He's scheduled to go to UCLA. For me, that's like, wow, that's big time, UCLA. And with that, Joey's written a book, Worthy to Win. Over the years, he's sent so many players to work with me. And the first question I asked him is, have you read Joey's book? And the answer is no. Well, we have one course, it's Tennis Intelligence Applied. It's 25 hours long. But to have kids that you've worked with for, say, 5 years, that's doom and gloom. They haven't completed the course. And there's a test at the end of it. We have 5 courses. You ask someone, they're flying back and forth and they're here for their 5th time. Okay, name the courses we have on our webpage. Free content, free educational tennis content. And for those people maybe listening for the first time, my name's Steve Smith. Use my name in third person. It's not Steve Smith stuff. Andy Fitzgerald did so many things with us. It's not Steve and Andy stuff. It's just rich in history. When you think about, say, a lengthy career, someone like a Vic Braden, that's just one of the 8 pillars we have. But to really study the content. So then if you were to take 10 minutes a day, Matt Clore has been a guest on our podcast, and he recruited my son Connor, and he was intrigued by how Connor hit the ball, how Connor, as a young kid going to college, knew quite a bit about doubles. So he was curious, and he started with 30 minutes a day. We're going to look at the content 30 minutes a day. It's not something that you can just look at one time. For a junior to come and visit us, if they come several times, they're only going to get so much out of it the first visit. second visit, third visit. I think we all reflect back that it certainly takes time to have a higher and higher level of understanding. But, coming back to when you get out of bed, make your bed. Just make your bed. No discussion. Air the bed out. Forget that. Make the bed. And the gentleman who said that in his commencement speech said, at the end of the day, when you come back, your bed is made. You start off with a sense of accomplishment. You get something done. Someone that I coached, I coached the players that he was chaperoning, and he played in the NFL. Didn't have a long stay in the NFL, but he played in the NFL. And before you go to the bathroom, everybody gets in the morning, they have to go to the bathroom, hit the floor. We're telling people right now, why don't you just do 5 push-ups? It was always 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups before you go to the bathroom in the morning. You just get down on the floor, boom, go. And we have all these routines. So study content would be one. Study content would be one. But have a place where you can mark it down. If it was just 10 minutes a day, 10 minutes is a long time. We do this as an exercise, You just take a watch and get 1 minute of silence. It's a long time. It's like 10 minutes. Everybody's got 10 minutes. And then you got to hear it again. When I'm explaining something to a group of players, I have someone who's been there for 5 minutes, someone's been there 5 weeks, someone's been there 5 years. I expect, and I even challenge and step up on that and have the person who's been there 5 years, okay, I started this session covering the dimensions of the court or formations for doubles. With that, you finish. I started it, boom, I'm great. Now you finish the class or finish the explanation, demonstration. To get a junior tennis player to do this is so tough now because they're always switched on. The brain's not switched on, growing myelin. What's switched on is their cell phone, their iPad, their laptop. That didn't exist years ago. Just didn't exist. People had to go out and make their own fun. One thing is every tennis player who has high competitive goals, they should at least master a second sport. That comes from the Soviet system years ago. And actually with the Soviets, they all started with gymnastics. But to have a kid visualize for 10 minutes, you can call it meditation, your eyes closed. On a rainy day, okay, we're going to clean the house. It's just amazing being around tennis players. They don't even know how to pick up after themselves. Just because daddy maybe, but mommy did everything for them. I can get people crying. Not too long ago, I had someone ask, I took some shots at the mom. He said, your kid asked this. Kid's a teenager. He's going to have peanut butter on toast. And he asked, do I put the peanut butter on the bread and put it in the toaster, or do I put the bread in the toaster, it pops out, and then I put the peanut butter? That's someone who has been waited on, hand over fist, is waited on. But you're cleaning the house. Can kids think about what they want to accomplish for the day? Can they thought's your most powerful tool. I would say today, kids with their phone, they don't daydream. Daydream is a good thing. You look out the window. But actually, I think that's another comment too, is talking to group players earlier, is don't dream about winning. Dream about working, the process. So many people are worried about what school they're going to go to. We've covered that on these podcasts. D1 is go where you're wanted and go where you have the opportunity to practice and play. College tennis, you want to be a pro player. You get out of college, you're only 22 years old. Some kid's 16 years old, you would double your life and you should still be playing college tennis. I got a text from Rob Krychek yesterday, and his son is Austin, who we had on as a guest. I've known him since he was 7. So he was born in 1990. Now he's 32. And he's top 10 in the world in doubles. That's another thing with the people that are so scoreboard oriented. And um, two paths for a tennis player, junior tennis player. Are you going to be a teenage sensation like an Alcaraz? He's the most recent teenage sensation. Or are you going to be a late bloomer? Parents, when it comes to time management, the financial side, I would take the path of a late bloomer. Tracy Austin says it quite well, is you don't find pro tennis finds you. It's the same thing with these Power 5 conferences. You know, the name schools, the big time Division I programs. You don't find them, they find you. You know, these we had Ed Crass on, great guy, and for years, Ed, you should listen to Ed with his podcast and the one-on-one doubles. That get off on a tangent. It's just amazing that kids play one-up, one-back doubles. You watch the Bryan brothers. If you study the history of a sport, the history of tennis, the great teams served and volleyed. And you know, you do have the Maverick, you have Jack Sock, and the modern game of doubles and how it's changing. With, you know, you just want to reduce risk and make less errors and go and be able to be aggressive. Nadal, how do you beat Nadal? That's easy. Don't miss and be super aggressive. That applies for singles and doubles. So with that, the kid goes to net, singles or doubles, they're going to lose. They go to the net to lose at a faster rate. But do people have long-term vision? Forget the 2-inch trophy. You know, 64 10-year-olds play tournament, who wins? One 10-year-old. So all the routines, running program. You know, I'm not an expert when it comes to fitness. Not an expert in so many different areas, but I would say that most kids that we meet in tennis, they should fire their fitness trainer. And their fitness trainer may be extremely competent. But when you go see a fitness trainer, you should be measured. Okay, do this. Here's a technique to do it properly. And this is what you need to do. Just like someone who takes a piano lesson once a week. This is what you need to do during the week. Do this, this, and this, and then we'll progress. Fitness is the same thing. You know, kids' parents have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on tennis. And we've taught a lot of kids to hit the ball where they look like tennis players. But they can't hold their legs together for 15, 20 seconds, just 6 inches off the ground. You know, that's how you should watch a YouTube clip. You get down on a carpet and you're going to do abs while you study content. You know, so 2 birds, 1 stone. So coming back to asking these kids questions, rainy day, every day, some things you want to do on every day. Now, if you list off all these routines, and the kid has to put, they're a student athlete, academics first, but are they just recording? I'll just take some pencil paper, just check it. Did I do it? Did I do it? What did you do? Daily monitoring chart, one piece of paper for the week. And time just goes by. It just goes by. We do this with players is we can do it where we hand out the test, or we just say, okay, get out a piece of paper and ask them the question like, how long is the tennis court down the line? How long is the tennis court diagonally? And we just throw out the numbers. 180, 130, 30, 19.1, with 65.9. Just ask all these different questions. Do they know the information? And we say, if you don't know these numbers, we really can't have a conversation with you. So then we start talking about stats. Rainy day, charting a tennis match. It's amazing. We film players and ask them to just just chart themselves playing points. Don't do it. They don't do it. We'll make a narrated slow motion analysis of a player. They come in, we film them technically. We film them playing points tactically. And we film them technically, and we're around 15%. We're less than 15% of people that watch the tape, supposed to watch it 3 times. First time straight through, second time stop and start the tape. Third time, Write down in logical sequential order the adjustments you need to make, and then send me an email. And then there's not many of out-of-body experiences, but one is a mirror, shadow swing in front of the mirror. So that's one of the, did you put mirrors up? I mean, I've trained people for years, and did you and your dad, did you put mirrors up in your garage yet? No. It's like, own the cone. Do you have a cone? No. For us, if people are following our program to the nth degree on the serve, they have a string hanging from the ceiling, carport, garage, somewhere, and they have a poster of the word pitcher method. They've got mirrors, they've got a camera, tripod, and they've got a practice log, and they do it. Maybe they're only going to go through that service motion slowly 5 times, but it just takes a minute to do all these different exercises, and then they check it off. That's how people become great. Repetition. It's all in the reps, but you have to have quality with quantity. Skip rope routine. Rainy day. What are you doing on a rainy day? You can do this. You should do this every day. We tell people every day, find 12 minutes. We had a player recently. It's not like I'm throwing anybody under the bus. Traveled here from another country. Didn't have a skip rope. Take her to Walmart. Get her a skip rope. A week goes by, and she hasn't used a skip rope. Self-motivation is the only type of motivation. I certainly can, like any coach, start barking, and through my voice is a tool, is get people to move. Get people to look like an athlete the way they're moving in their training. But that inner voice, can they do that on their own? So a rainy day, the skip rope routine, I learned this from Vic Braden, who certainly was such an admirer of the late, great Jack Kramer. Kramer used to say, if you skip rope 15 minutes, go hard for 3 minutes like a boxer, and that's where it comes from, boxing. And then he would just rest for a minute. We tell people, okay, you can do 30 seconds of abs. You can shadow swing your serve. A minute's a long time, once again. And I ask players all the time, okay, I've known you for 5 years. I've known you 4 years. Okay, let's get it out. And get the phone, boom, 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 instant calculator, Johnny on the spot. And so I've known you, say, 5 years. I've known you for almost 2,000 days. What percentage of those 2,000 days have you done the skip rope routine? Now, I explained this to a player years ago, a player from England I used to play with. He was Tarzan, so fit. And he would do the drill. You'd do it for an hour. But you would think of rainy days, like, okay, but you got to build up to it. So people don't even do the 3 rounds. It's really only 11 minutes because you're done with that third round of 3 minutes. Don't even do that. And then how can they be confident? Can you be confident? And I think also people need to realize that college tennis coaches is more of a squad. Okay, we have this group of 10 players, and we're working with these 10 players, for the school year. Maybe if, someone comes and goes during that year, or someone joins the program in January, but you have a squad. Okay, and these are the routines. I grew up in ice hockey, and I've been to the Frozen Four many times, the Final Four in the NCAAs. And the warm-ups have changed a little bit, but they're basically out there doing the same type of passing shots, movements that they did when they were first introduced to the sport. Basketball players. You go to tournaments now, and a lot of tennis players, they won't even warm up at the net. They don't hit volleys or overheads. Ask a group of players, what's the longest distance you've ever run? It used to be said that if you could run 5 miles, you could run 10. If you could run 10, you could run a marathon. You can't do 10 miles just once, but you build yourself up and you run 10 miles. Could you gut it through? And I'm not saying that from my own personal experience. I did do a lot of running. I got bad advice when I was a kid. Hockey's an anaerobic sport, and I wanted to be good. And I was told, just go jog. I lived by this lake, and I used to run around this lake daily. I mean, I was doing 70 miles a week, go around the lake day after day. LSD used to be a drug, an acid, but it's also long, slow distance. But you got the good guy and the bad guy. You got the angel and the devil. You've got Tim Galloway, the doer and the teller. The teller's the ego. The ego needs to shut up. So you're running. And most people, the Marines will say this, is that you're going to break down mentally before you break down physically. But just to go out and gut through that. And and that's, I think a lot of physical trainers here in the U.S. make that mistake. Is, you don't want to do any distance running, and then the kids hear that, and we get people on a track. It's amazing. They're ranked in their section, ranked nationally perhaps. They're running like a 7:45 mile. You can get on YouTube and watch Jim Ryan. He had the world's record for the longest time in the mile. It's a great story. He went out for football in the fall, basketball in the winter, baseball in the spring, get cut. And they took him in cross country. And he ends up being tall and lanky, great stride. And his buddies helped him break a 4-minute mile in high school. And he said he didn't know how to run. It's all on YouTube. And he's shifting his head like this. His arms were going east and west instead of going in the same direction as his legs. So his record for the longest time, fact checker, Andres Barbosa, 3:51, but in high school he ran a 3:58, 7 seconds. 7 seconds he improved, and said when he ran a 3:58, he didn't know how to run. So you think about the details. So we have so many players that have gone to this academy, that academy, and they've got a regress palm-up serve, and they have no idea what that even means, and what it can do to the shoulder, the rotator cuff, and such. So running, to skip rope, to run with JFK, that's been mentioned, in the 1960s in the U.S., everybody was doing 4 exercises. One was, how many push-ups could you do in a minute? And I think trainers will make the mistake, say, no, that's the wrong way to do push-ups. Just get them to do push-ups. They're not going to kill themselves doing a push-up where their arms are further out versus further in. Say, this is the only way to do push-ups. I was a kid, okay, can you do fingertip push-ups? Can you do push-ups on your fist? Can you do a one-arm push-up? Thankfully, something you don't hear anymore is a girl's push-up, where girls would just be on their knees. But I have players do that all the time. You can't do push-ups. And I'll just give them the story. It used to be called girls push-ups. I'll have boys do girls push-ups. You're better off to do just with your knees on the ground, just your upper body, and you do 1 push-up, you start to grow muscle. And then every day, if people were to do the skip rope routine and just get down and do some push-ups and sit-ups, it's not like you got to get in the car with mom and dad and drive to the gym, and then you have to have, paying somebody all this money to toss medicine balls back and forth. Be shown how to throw a medicine ball properly, get the proper weight, and then you got to do things. Get a buddy. That's one of the toughest things in tennis, is to find a practice partner. Kids go off to college and play. Are they going to show up with a ball hopper? Are they going to tour the campus and find out where there's a place to get a backboard, especially indoors? Are they looking for empty squash courts, empty racquetball courts? Do they get to practice early and say, okay, overheads. We got to hit 100 overheads before practice starts. You feed me 10, I'll feed you 10. That type of energy. Energy makes energy. This is something I ask players. This gets away from a rainy day, but have you ever called someone up? They're playing varsity. They're on the high school tennis team. I find myself not asking that as much because I've coached a lot of kids that don't play high school tennis, which is sad. But you're on the varsity. Have you ever called somebody up on the JV team to do baskets? Have you ever been clever enough where you're going to practice with someone, you're meeting them 8:30 on Saturday morning, and you call someone and say, hey, let's do baskets from 7:30 to 8:30. And if that older kid calls the younger kid, he's going to be there. And That just doesn't happen. I mean, and tennis players need to be told, okay, we understand where you have to be selfish, but stop and think is if you give, you'll get. If once a week everybody were to play someone who's at a lower level, parents, with parents, kids don't come with directions. Okay, it's not a, you know, ragu pragu sauce on the pasta, instant spaghetti. With many times I'll tell parents, well, how many kids do you have? Well, we have two. I go, how old is the oldest one? 12. Well, so you have 1 year experience. You have 12 years experience with one kid. And how old is the second kid? 8. Okay, so now you have 8 years experience with two kids. And I tell kids I work with all the time, hey, your parents are smarter than I am. Socioeconomic functioning levels. Most tennis pros can't afford their own lessons. So, but has a tennis parent taken a kid down the road before? Have they taken a kid from point A to point B? I tell parents, if you're going to listen to other parents, you should listen to a parent who has had a child go from A to B, where they've gone from, say, junior tennis and they're playing college tennis, or they're playing beyond that. Who's the smartest person at a 10 under tournament? The parent of the kid who wins the tournament. So when you ask people what's the longest distance they've ever run, most of them have no answer. They have no answer. Well, from my house to the tennis court, how far is that? Maybe 4 or 5 miles. Once a week, if kids were just once a week, and I don't think that's enough, say, okay, we're going to run 3 miles. One of my sons spent a lot of time in Sweden, Växjö, I'm mispronouncing the name, but they have a sign up, maybe it's changed by now, but 88 ATP titles, V-liners from Midtown. So this takes a small group of players. I mean, they didn't have 88 players each win one ATP title. But from my memory, the lake right by the tennis courts is 3 miles, and the players get there in the morning. This is my son telling me the story. Now, I went there as well, but he was there more than I was. That coach go, well, we're not quite organized, just go run around the lake. When you get back, we'll have the practice planned out. And they finish the morning session in the summer, and it's like, okay, we're going to get lunch organized, go run around the lake. My son's saying 3 different times throughout the course of the day. So that's 9 miles. Now, what happens is, again, people break down mentally. They say, okay, let's just go. Bjorn Borg used to run through the streets of Paris on his days off, at the Grand Slams. I should say the majors, not the Grand Slams, to say it correctly. At the majors, you play one match and then you're off the next day. It's not true at the US Open, where they have the semis on Saturday. I always think that was unfortunate for Sampras, to digress, get off on a tangent, where he lost to Safin, he lost to Hewitt. But if he could have played on the Friday and played on the Sunday, I think that would have been better for him. But with that, Jim Courier, my understanding is that Courier would play a long match, and then he'd start to run the grounds where everybody could see him, the players could see him running after his match. And then he would put himself in a position where people thought he was running, but he wasn't. But just the game of intimidation. I tell players, when you go to college and you get on the track, tennis kids look at me like I'm making this up. Any program worth its weight in salt, they're going to get you on the track and say that you have to run the mile in this time or you don't hit a ball. And, some of them, I think most coaches around 5:30, which is not that challenging, around 5:30 mile. The guys, the women, the times are a little bit slower. And you don't hit a ball unless you can break such and such time. The juniors look at me like I'm making that up. you won't hit a tennis ball. So players need to be conditioned. They need to be prepared to play college tennis. 4 laps of life. Get people's attention when you talk to them. Rainy day. So today I was talking to an intern we have here from Germany, second time, great guy. He's 26 years old. He has an undergraduate degree in sports science. He wants to make his career fitness training. And we're trying to help him out, securing a graduate assistantship to get a master's degree. First class guy, knowledgeable, mature beyond his years. So then I have 18, 16, 16, teenage boys. Just talking to them. Well, get their attention. I go, I'm on the last lap of my life. If you live to be 80, if you're fortunate enough to be 80 years old, so 20 years. So the teenagers are all getting close to finishing their first lap of life. So the 26-year-old, he's on a second lap. And there's no rerun. Let's you believe in reincarnation. And that's fine. Live and let live. But this is your time. This is your life. You'll never get this time back. But I think too many times it's, just chill. People need to monitor what they do with their time. They need to know how much screen time they have. And repetitively. YouTube clips are like potato chips. You can't eat one potato chip. You can't watch one YouTube clip. With PIP, Pooping and Pile, Mike Carter had this lecture. It was great a couple weeks ago. The letter P. Don't put the pro in procrastination. And people keep putting things off. I ask people all the time, do you really love tennis? And they're at that age of the boys I was talking to today. And I go, well, if you double your life, okay, you're 32, you'd be 36. Do you plan on playing the 35 nationals? Would you like to have that option if you're not playing pro tennis? And all they need to do is just work at their craft when they can. Eric Van Dillen, a famous American player years ago, he went to graduate school 1 semester on, 1 semester off. Think outside the box. I've told so many kids, American kids, why don't you go, what are you going to do in the summers when you're a college tennis player? And maybe their level is that they have to play the intercollegiate, the ITA tournaments, UTR tournaments. Maybe their level's higher and they can go to France and play. It's not connected to the ATP or the WTA. But they don't do it. They've got a rich uncle. They've got somebody who's going to have them be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Roger Federer. I'm so fortunate to have the right coaches at the right time. But rainy days, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you can even plan it out. Again, if someone works really hard, a movie to me is like a 2-week vacation. It's an escape. It's a great thing, okay? And there's some good movies, there's some bad movies. But you're not rewatching the movie for the 4th, 5th time. With the extras. To be an extraordinary tennis player, you have to do the ordinary an extraordinary amount of time. You can't be too cool for school. In baseball, there's the on-deck circle. In front of the stadium, the baseball player gets out in the circle. They're batting next, and they're practicing their swing. Basketball, okay, we're always talking about Michael Jordan, great athlete. He's at the foul line. You see him visualizing, shadowing, and then the referee gives him the ball. It's a standstill shot. And if you look at the technique, I always tease, maybe not Shaq, but the technique of the basketball player is so consistent. And actually, if you start to break down, like, where are the great players at the contact point? They're not violating physical laws. With junior tennis players, 2 types of thought: reactive thought, reflective thought. note-taking. What's ideal is not to talk to a tennis player after they lose, not to talk to a tennis player after they won. If it's the last match of the tournament, for example, say, hey, just take 24 hours and have them write down, win or lose, really, what they did well, what they could do better. Reflective thought. I do think that there's many parents, I've experienced this so many times, where they're telling the story, well, my kid double faulted. Story started off 14 times, and by the time the person's telling the story to the fifth person, now my kid's double faulted 21 times. And they weren't charting it. They weren't charting it. It's like I caught a fish, I caught this huge fish, and the story grows. You chart matches to get the objective data on how to practice. Well, tennis kids don't even know how to chart matches. We tell every kid, you should have, if I walked into your house, I want to go in the garage and I want to see where the string's hanging. I want to see where the mirrors are. I want to see where the cone is. I want to see the exercise mat. I want to see the practice log. One coach in particular, he took us up on that, and he heard that. And I suggested, why don't you schedule lessons at the kid's house? Say, okay, I've been coaching now for 2 months. Next lesson's at your house. And you just walk in and you're basically the tennis police. Okay, where do you do it? Where's the mirrors? Where's the exercise mat? And they just give you this dumb look. They don't do it. I always think of Tom Brady. He talks about his father, gets emotional. His father was so much his mentor and quarterback. Pretend he's taking the snap, takes the crossover steps going back. He's doing the same movement now as a 45-year-old in the NFL. Same thing he was doing in elementary school. Is he doing it better? Yeah, but it's fundamental. It's just fundamentals, right? It's basics. With parenting, the parent, conscientious neglect, be the parent who's furthest from the fence. But say, okay, this is what you have to do. You do these things, and then you can play tournaments. I know one parent who has their kids do household chores. They have to find a way to earn the points, whatever the system is the parents create. That's not the way it is anymore. It's not the parents' fault. It's society. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth, but I didn't want for anything. But I used to have to pay 50% of the summer camp fee. Used to have to buy my own skates. All hockey players bought their own skates. And you would find a way to scrape shutters and mow lawns and shovel snow. That's gone away. People don't know how to brown bag it. They don't even know what that means. And again, it's not to beat kids up, but mom and dad, if they're doing everything for their kid, we have some kids don't know how to make toast. That, I always ask kids, they come in and they're carrying a thermo, which is good. They've got snacks and various types of drinks that replenish the energy supply. And I go, who packed that? My mom, my dad, my mom, my dad. And they're a high maintenance kid. That's one negative about college tennis. Now, that doesn't mean it's straight across the board. Said this on the podcast once. We were looking for someone to coach Raven Klaassen. We wanted someone over the age of 25. We wanted someone that was not from the U.S. I hate to say that. We wanted someone who did not play college tennis. Why? And it doesn't mean that we had to go with that criteria, but college tennis players, everything's taken care of them for them. I remember Mads Wielander got in a lot of trouble years ago where he said, well, I think college tennis is negative because it's too easy. And I remember people taking shots at him, but they just took the soundbite. What he meant was too easy was that somebody else was organizing all their travel. They basically all they had to do was pack their bag, and everything was taken care of, from where they're going to stay to what restaurant. Didn't have to worry about anything. Now, granted, they do have to deal with the academic load while they're a student athlete. But anyway, just to wrap up, actually with the weather here in Florida, we had a guest scheduled, but we've had to reschedule. Andy Fitzgerald started our podcast, told me the show must go on. Give out content where there's hopefully value. And granted, it's repetitive, many things on our podcast. But for example, when we made the course Tennis Intelligence Applied, we thought young coaches would watch it once and then just start watching it again. Is just go through it. We found out we had a webmaster when we first put that course together, and it was for sale initially, and many years ago now. For 3 years it was for sale, and no marketing, and it did quite well. But after 3 years, we just gave it away. Still are doing that. With the country that purchased the website, U.S. was number one. The webmaster could tell the Serbians were number one as far as who completed the course. And, I don't have the technical knowledge to how they could do that. I'm sure it's pretty easily done now, but that was going close to 20 years ago, 16 years ago. But rule number one for us is do just the opposite of what you want to do. Kids don't want to do 10 minutes of yoga. They don't want to practice charting. So I go in a kid's house and I go, yes or no answers. That's what I do when I ask these questions to these kids. And again, you can do it every day, but definitely on a rainy day. So I told a group of players, I said, why don't you get organized? And they can't even pick up after themselves. It's like, no, don't take food to your room. Food's downstairs. They do what they want when they want, because that's how they're parented. And so do you chart matches? And the answer is no. So I walked into your house, here's your TV, where's your clipboard? And we just created a charting system off of Bill Jacobson's system. We call it the T chart. Each player has a T. There's a plus on one side, a minus on the other. So this player has a plus and a minus. If you've listened to our podcast, I was disappointed. Bill Jacobson is such a class act, such a gentleman. He's very old now and soft-spoken gentleman. He said, well, he didn't think that, he could handle the length of a podcast. So we dedicated 1 or 2 podcasts to Bill. Point ends 3 ways. Plus is a winner. Minus is an unforced error. Minus F is a forced error. And it's just the same thing over and over again. Casey Curtis, I talked to him quite a bit. A Californian who spent years and years in Canada, coached Raonic, among others. And he told me he doesn't like junior tennis. I said, well, you know what ITF stands for? Idiots traveling foolishly. He said, could you say that again? Yeah, idiots traveling foolishly. He said, I'm going to use that. And people scrambling around, well, we're going to go play an ITF 4. And it's like, to see all the money being spent. I was just recently at this ITF 4, J4, level 4, whatever it's called nowadays. And, with brain typing and being a feeler, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but it's all the money that's been invested and the level of tennis that's being played. Granted, with our 4 Grand Slams, granted with the sport being so international, when you turn the TV on and you watch an Alcaraz today, it's like, wow, that guy is fantastic. Amazing tennis player. But if you look at what he's doing with the racket too, his fundamentals are very, very good. But it just comes down to what can you do right in your house? What can you do in your backyard To ask someone, like I mentioned earlier, someone's on a college campus, have you found a backboard? Most college tennis players, they get to college, they don't do baskets on their own, and they don't hit a backboard. They certainly don't look for a backboard. So I ask kids, I meet them, and I go, well, how far for you to walk to a backboard? And they just give you the, deer in headlights. Have you gone behind the elementary school in your neighborhood? And generally, you go behind an elementary school, you can find a place to hit against a brick wall on the right with the playground. You can always hit behind a supermarket. It's not the safest place to find a wall, but that's a great place to hit. I've had kids at tournaments, and it rains, and I take them to a grocery store. And we go behind the grocery store, we start hitting the backboard. And, say you just have a group of, maybe it's 2 minivans, and you've got 8 players. And you know right there if they're going, this is great. This is awesome. I'm going to get to hit some more balls. You can just tell. You look in a kid's eye. One thing that kids don't do anymore is, hey, let's just hit cross courts for half an hour. Cross court this way, because they used to just take the one private lesson. But a rainy day, coming back to the 4 laps of life, is there are some places here in the U.S. I think Boston would be a place. It's like London, Dublin. You call it a pub culture. You go into a pub restaurant, and there's 3 generations. I think that's something where the Canadians, because just the weather, people in Canada don't live in the tundra. They all live within like 100 miles from the Canadian border. And a lot of Canadian kids are fortunate they live in closer proximity to their grandparents. Wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge with time. But that doesn't happen very often. I've said that many times, where it used to be where there was only one TV. Wealthy family only had one TV. 3 generations are in that room, and they're watching, say, a football game. And there's just basically no talking. But now kids don't even watch tennis. They don't watch tennis. It's just amazing. Not many kids watch tennis, but they should watch tennis as far as inspiration. I think if someone watches Roger Federer warm up many tennis styles, service line to service line at the US Open or Indian Wells, and they think that's how he practices. I know people that have gone overseas to practice with him. And at times, you hear the stories, well, he had 2 4-hour sessions, and he had 2 guests, one for the first 4 hours and one for the second 4 hours. To see how people work. And rainy day, it just takes a second to find out. You watch a kid go, he's got no miles on his legs. The kid's been playing tennis, but he's been to this academy, that academy. He's just a customer. He hasn't been trained like an athlete. He's been trained like a tennis kid. And there is no get the stopwatch out. But, how far do you live from the backboard? How far do you live from the track? How often do you go to the track? I mean, you can coach someone, they're 15 years old. And, where I'm coming from is a lot of players are sent to me, and they've already been playing X amount of years. And people are sent to us to work on technique. Like, oh, okay, go see these guys. They can help you with your strokes. They can help you with your serve, your backhand. But it's really helping them with character and work ethic and the whole package. It's just all encompassing. So a rainy day is not a day to go to the mall. Granted, all work and no play made Jack a dull boy. John Newcomb used to always say that don't take a day off, because inclement weather, you don't know when it's going to rain. Roger Federer's idea of a day off, 24 hours. You stop practice Saturday at 3, and you don't practice again until Sunday at 3. That's a day off. It's 24 hours. It's amazing how many people knock it off. Where, how many college coaches get up every day and they want to win a national championship. I mean, I do think with a college coach, it's like a club coach, very nice lifestyle. And are they really working it? So I do think when parents, what they really should do perhaps is maybe more the grandparents, but storytelling. The parents, I do think kids sometimes tire of hearing like in the old days, this is what it used to be like. But I think parents should try to recreate that. Now we have a lot of Indian kids playing tennis in the U.S. just because of their academic credentials and the computer industry, a lot of IT jobs. And the Indian kids are signing up for tennis. And I've had some Indian parents, when they've listened to me talk to kids, they say, I haven't heard someone talk to a kid like that since I lived in the old country. Dave Anderson said on our podcast, has been mentioned many times, what's the theme for tennis is back to the future. Back to the future. The kids show up at practice and they don't even have running shoes. They need to have a pair of running shoes. We have something that's very popular on the tennis channel, the bag check. That's one of the first segments on our course, Tennis Intelligence Supply. What do you have in that bag? You're organized. Did you pack the bag? I mean, we have to tell the parents, make sure your kid carries their own bag. But with that, if a kid's a scholar, in their bag, and I perhaps spent some time being a tennis scholar, but a scholar is somebody who's studying a subject that's not part of their academic curriculum. It's not assigned, it's not homework, it's not schoolwork. And so what's in that bag? And they have bands, they have skip ropes, they have running shoes, they have their own stopwatch. Of course, now they have their phone, which has a stopwatch. Are kids doing anything with their pulse rate? When it comes down to nutrition, are they keeping track of, garbage in, garbage out? What do they eat? Do sleep patterns? Are they disciplined? I've got to go to bed. And, I'm going to get up early. Scotty Perelman, he was a guest on our podcast. Always great to listen to Scotty Perelman. When you get up in the morning, you own the city. You get up in the morning, there's no interference. You just get up and you go. The early bird catches the worm. With the review session, rainy day is at the end. Read this about Courier. In John Nienagel's book, I had a friend who's very good friends with Courier's mother. Said, hey, could you read this chapter on Courier and tell me if the mother agreed with how Nienagel brain typed them. ENFJ, where people forget when Courier won the French, as an American, his acceptance speech was in French. And now he taught himself to play the guitar. And he says now, if you read about players, and I'm more into the character than I am the nuts and bolts, technique. People come to see us for nuts and bolts, technique. But with that, you can't really teach technique if you can't teach character. But Jim Courier said, you can't believe how focused, how disciplined he was at such a young age. But we've met the enemy. The enemy is us, time management, rainy day routines. People are told to do all these different things. Just to sit in a chair and change your grip. Braden, if you do this for 5 days for 5 minutes, where you changing your grip, which people argue about, you have no time to change grips. And Braden, the ball comes right at you. What grip you use? You go with this grip. There's no such thing as a perfect grip with the least amount of adjustment. But it's like a chest pass in basketball. People don't go to the point where, you don't hit a backhand volley with your arm bent. bent to bend on the forehand volley. The arm's going to be straight. The aerodynamics, we know that the pros, especially the advanced players, they'll sometimes add another segment, have their arm be bent. But at the impact point, so you have to do three things: turn, change your grip, and straighten your arm. Are you going to study content and change your grip at the same time? Do you even know the grips? And then do you know the grips and how important they are when you play a match? If you had a chance to scout your opponent, can you look on the other side of the net, baseline to baseline, 78 feet away, and you know the kid's grips? Or most of the kids are so scoreboard oriented, outcome oriented. They're playing somebody and they don't even know the kid's got no backhand volley. You warm up, your kid's got no backhand volley. They come to the net. I'm not going to hit a TV passing shot. I'm going to hit the ball with their backhand volley. They're going to finesse the ball. I'm going to move forward. So all these things, that's where, do kids think like that? They're cleaning house. They're organizing their room. And do they think like that? Is tennis on their mind? Thought's your most powerful tool. The 4 steps, this should be able to tell you, Mayer, Englishman. I have lots of books in my library. Should be able to give credit where credit's due. But the 4 steps, I tell tennis players all the time, I had nothing to do with your idea of being a tennis player. I had nothing to do, how did you find your way here? We don't have a brochure. We didn't recruit you. We don't have an ad, but you're here. So it wasn't my idea, but your idea, you want to be a tennis player. So the 4 steps is idea, thought, action, results. So we have put together a lot of thoughts. Are they original? No. We have a few original thoughts. But we've taken, say, Jim Lair, his school of thought. Jim Verdick, his school of thought. Peter Burwash. Just go through the 8 pillars. And in Tennis Intelligence Applied, we've mentioned over 100 coaches. So you have idea, thought, and then action. So a rainy day doesn't mean you put your head back on the pillow. That you can sleep in. And the parents have to be workers too. So if you, for sure they do, with the idea, thought, action, results. The results will be there. But I think a lot of times parents too, it's like, okay, rainy day, a little bit of a break, and your brain doesn't know it's raining outside. Your brain doesn't know, it's your day off. The brain, as far as producing myelin, the kid needs to be told, you are a myelin farmer. And unfortunately, most kids, you think good attitude, bad attitude, that's huge, huge, huge. But it's good myelin, bad myelin. And when you meet a kid and you just know, okay, he's got bad myelin, that's your forehand. That's your backhand. That's what position you're going to stand in the baseline. That's the tactics you're going to use in a tiebreaker. It's myelin. You're programmed, and you're not programmed for success. So you got to rewrite the software package. And I would think the 2 words that would really motivate a player is brain memory. You want to be a great piano player? Play piano. You want to be a great runner? Run. He's got a mathematical mind. Perhaps. If someone wants to be really great at math, you do math. Around the clock, you do math. And it's your choice. It's your choice. I guess I could end with a quote, Nick Saban. Choices are just an illusion. If you want to be good, you have no choices. And this is what you have to do. And tennis kids should not look at these routines as work. The tennis kids are privileged. I'm privileged to be working with tennis kids. I spent a lot of time in Panera, coffee shop here in the U.S. And there's tennis kids on one side of the counter. And I hate to say it this way, but there's real kids on the other side of the counter. That's not really the best way to say it. But they're from the real world. And they're the ones that are working. You know, they got to mop the floor afterwards, and they're working. And you know, accomplishing your dreams is a nightmare of work. But trying to become a better tennis player, a young kid should not look at that as work. As work. Anyway, episode 118. We'll get the show back on the road with some guests. I hope that you found some value in this review session. But Rainy Days. Bill Harris, Amazing Racers. It's a great day as long as there's no thunder and lightning. His book is amazing. You know, upstate New York, central New York. He sets his schedule, and February 12th, we're going to do this. We're going to run 12 miles, whatever they're going to do. And they, regardless, it could be seriously 18 below zero, and they're going to do whatever he wrote down. And what's amazing is all those stories are out there. That's one of the best cultures. That's one of the best cultures. I started reading about their program. I go visit my mother, and just start reading about this cross-country program. It's amazing. And I tell every kid they should have that book. Just like in their shoulder bag, every kid should have the little book of talent. Daniel Coyle, he's got the talent code, but the little book of talent. And you tell a kid every day, take it out and just read. There's 52 tips. Every day, take it out of your bag and read one tip. And again, I'll just shut up. Organization means graduation. PIP, get your poop in a pile. A better way to say that, get your sugar together. And if you want to become a tennis player, you can become a tennis player. Just got to put your head down. Granted, where we're trying to help out is people need to work smart. We know lots of tennis players that worked hard, but unfortunately they haven't worked smart because they haven't been taught how to hit the ball efficiently. But even with that, we go to tournaments, and you know, there's some kids out there that they've got nothing. They've got nothing when it comes down to technique. They can't really put patterns together. They can just crawl and fight, scrap from the baseline, and they're a tough out. So you got to have the whole package. But if someone invests more time, if they're more dedicated, they'll be a better competitor. If they just get up and they do this and do this and do this, there'll be more on the line. They've invested more time, so when it comes down to a match, they've broken comfort zones so they can be uncomfortable. Anyway, another podcast in the books. Thanks for listening. Adios, amigos. How long's that one? Shorter one, huh?
An hour, 8 minutes.
That's good. Give me a short one. Thanks for doing that.
What was your repeat of what you said earlier today?